Though, like, I'm just going to quickly run through the list of, like, here's all the not top 5 stuff I played this year. And then here's the top 5, and then I'll actually talk about those.
Yeah. Because this is funny. I was worried I wouldn't have enough stuff to make a top 5.
I was thinking that at first, but then I realized that I did play a lot this year.
Yeah, I actually played a fair bit. My list is probably smaller than yours.
Probably.
So do you want to do... Are you going first, then me?
Yeah.
Also, do we have any kind of introduction, or are we just...
I was just about to ask, have we already started?
I don't know.
Are we rolling?
Oh shoot, there's a camera in here.
Welcome to Tradin Extras.
The professional part of the podcast.
We should stop using that word.
We should. Look, joking is how I cope. And I got a big jar of copium jokes.
And I played a lot of games this year that mean that I need to cope. So again, because I don't know when we started recording, but I didn't think I would have enough games on this list to actually, have enough to talk about. But I surprisingly did. You'll notice a pattern. I'll get into it, I guess, when I talk about mine. But, yeah. Quick disclaimer for the viewers at home. I am, as of this recording, in the middle of editing our next episode of the podcast, the Danganronpa V3 episode. I will make this episode more of a priority because I want to get it ready around the time of New Year's. Mm-hmm. But that said, if I happen to finish the Danganronpa episode before it, while this one's done and before New Year's hits, that would be pretty impressive. I'm not sure that's gonna happen.
Yeah, we'll see.
I am 90% sure that this will come out first, but you get to have this fun little nebulous space where we don't know which will release until they both do.
It's funny when an extra and an episode overlap each other, because we're always like, could come out first, it could not. And it's funny because usually we err on the side of this will probably come out first, and then it doesn't.
That happened last year, didn't it? We got the Game of the Year thing, and then another episode that released on New Year's.
I don't know, man. That was a whole year ago. You think I remember that far back?
I'm surprised I remember this year. But let's talk about this year.
Let's talk about this year and the video games of this year. Did you play any good games this year?
I sure did.
Oh boy.
Let me tell you. So the first thing that I'm going to cover, I did a very bad job of keeping track of everything chronologically. So, I'm just going to say the name of games that I played this year.
Ah, cool. Mine will actually be in somewhat of an ordered list, but somewhat not.
Okay, and I can't even remember if I said this while we were within the bounds of starting the episode or not, but my plan, I'm just going to briefly mention, all of the games I played that are not top 5 material, and then I'm going to get into the ones that are, and talk about those a little bit more in depth.
Cool.
So first of all, our previous game of the year, Sonic Frontiers, got some DLC.
That it did! Quite a bit of DLC, actually.
It was quite good. It was also a little frustrating. I've got the t-shirt that says I beat it before the patch.
There's a t-shirt that says that?
No, it's the joke, I beat Sonic Frontiers DLC before it got patched.
T-shirt, yeah. And all I got was this stupid t-shirt.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I technically got one of those too. I just had to do it on the easiest difficulty because that was brutal.
The only part that I had to switch back to easy mode was that, stupid boss rush thing where they messed with the parry timing.
Even on easy, that was brutal.
It was. I was lucky that I already did, a level 1
run of the game, so I was used to fighting the bosses like with hardly any rings and and all that.
Immense suffering.
We're getting too excited
yes.
talking about this stuff.
Sorry.
I was trying to be brief with these because I didn't put any like DLC stuff on my top 5s.
Gotcha.
But, speaking of DLC, Mario Kart 8 also finished its DLC this year.
That's right.
And boy, oh boy, the two characters that I wanted most for them to make playable were Pauline and Diddy Kong.
Aha!
And they put them in the game, so I'm happy. They didn't put in any more tracks from 64, though.
The law of equivalent exchange.
I was butthurt about that, because I really wanted Bowser's Castle 64, but instead we got Super Nintendo Bowser's Castle. I'm not salty, you are. Rainbow Road Wii was a great one to end it on, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I played Astral Chain.
Ooh.
Have you even heard of that?
Ooh, I think I remember you telling me that was like on your radar.
Right. It's Platinum Games.
Right. Yeah, I remember. I remember seeing it and thinking it looked cool.
Yeah, it's got some cool vibes. It is kind of designed in a way that it's like it can be single player or co-op. I haven't played it co-op, but it seems like it'd be more fun to play that way. But just the little bit that I played, like, it was cool. I had too much going on in my life for it to really hold my interest for long, but it was cool. Let's see. I made a YouTube video about this one. I played Among Us this year.
Wait, that was this year? Oh my goodness, wait a minute.
That was this year. That was pretty early on this year.
I forgot.
If you'd like to hear my full thoughts on the matter, and just in general watch me have some stupid fun, go see the Among Us video. But it's pretty good. For as much as I don't like social deduction games, and I really don't like lying, otherwise the game is a lot of fun. And speaking of social deduction games, I also played Secret Hitler for the first time this year, which is just worse Among Us. And yet it is easier to be like unhinged 500 IQ Kokichi plays when I'm playing this one, because there's not like a video game with it. It's literally just talking.
Now this episode has to come out after the Danganronpa episode.
If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. It's exactly. Does he know?
Does he know? Does anybody know about the F-Zero franchise? Hey. Because it finally got a game this year. In the form of F-Zero 99.
I can't believe F-Zero lived.
I can't believe we live in a timeline where it's more likely now for F-Zero to get a new game than Star Fox.
That's... I'm sitting down, but like I need to sit down after that.
Right. So F-Zero 99, I know a lot of longtime F-Zero fans are sad that this is all we're getting. And, like, believe you me, I would like something new in the style of GX. Mm-hmm. Like, absolutely. But for just getting this as, like, what I'm hoping is an appetizer, and they've got something else cooking in the back, F-Zero 99 is really good.
Yeah.
Let's see. I played Mario Party Superstars for the first time.
Oh!
That one was pretty fun, but, you know, it's Mario Party.
It's
remixing old Mario Party levels, so it is kind of the same old classic Mario Party experience, good and bad.
I derive a lot of joy from Mario Party, despite the fact that it's not, because I embrace the chaos and the randomness, and that's how you tell if you enjoy or don't enjoy Mario Party, is random elements.
Yep. When I play Mario Party, I've taken to heart it's not about winning, it's about sending a message.
For half a second, I thought you were about to say it's about having fun.
No,
and then,
no, it's not.
I see you sing the Plankton fun song, not the SpongeBob fun song.
Yeah. I think that's the true judge of a man's character, is which version of the fun song he sings. Normally I sing the SpongeBob fun song, but when I play Mario Party...
all bets are off.
So now I must continue to be an acolyte for my favorite game development company of all time, the Game Bakers. Classic game Fury that I adore with all my heart is very actiony and stylized and fun. They demade the game in an 8-bit style. It's the Fury demake. And if this were a full game and not just like a quick little demo they made, this would be like high on my top 5 games this year. Because it plays amazingly and it is so cool. Like, even for a retro game, it's got a cinematic feel to it. I am a big fan of that one. We also have another piece of Sonic media that came out this year, Sonic Superstars.
That's right.
And that one was good. I liked it. I thought it was mostly a fun time, and then a couple of the endgame bosses are like really stupid, just out of nowhere. But mostly I thought it was good, not good enough to break top 5 though, which is pretty rare for like a year that like a bunch of Sonic media came out. No Sonic games made my top 5, but
really?
Here we are.
Interesting.
Yeah, surprisingly, yeah. A lot of good Sonic media, but I played stuff that I liked better. Let's see. In terms of stuff that I've been playing with good old Snowfy and Guano, we started Blaze Blue Calamity Trigger. We're working on getting through that. That one's really interesting. It's a fighting game, but it also has sort of a visual novel component to it and like a really in-depth story. I think it's pretty good. I'm not much of a fighting game guy, and when I am a fighting game guy, it's, Street Fighter. But I'm still very impressed. I'm impressed to see where it goes. I also played a little bit of Blaze Blue Tag Team, and that's the one that has all the Ruby characters in it, and I like that.
I love that you're like, it's the one with the Ruby characters, and I'm like, never mind, like, I think Persona's in there as well.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of Persona and other things. You can literally play as just a giant tank with like a skull on it.
That's awesome.
I'm not even sure what it's from, but it's insane. Like, the whole roster is insane, but I'm a Ruby fan, and so I'm there for the Ruby content.
Go. Like, the funny thing was, I knew some Blaze Blue because I had friends who played it, and then like all my friends were freaking out about Persona, and I was like, "Yo, Ruby's in this? Heck yeah, I want to play it!" And then I never did.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the kind of thing that I would love to like spend hours upon hours playing, but it was fun while I played it. So I had the opportunity to play Team Fortress 2 for the first time.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm going to be careful with my words so as not to offend my good friend Snowflake the Pirate, who loves this game to pieces. Team-based deathmatch shooty kind of games are just really not for me. I love the vibe, I love all the characters, I love so many of the memes that have come from this game. Playing the actual game itself, I'm not the biggest fan of it. But I will be happy to enjoy more TF2 media and memes outside of the games. It's just like actually playing the game, like, I'm not crazy about it.
That's probably about where I sit. I love the memes in the community, but it's also one of those things that I'm like, dude, I'm so bad at this. I would just have a miserable time playing.
It's a shooter. I mean, I didn't have a miserable time.
I would have a miserable time because I'm bad at cooperative shooters. But like, because I think
it's not even just shooters for me. It's like team-based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because like Splatoon was the same way. Like, I didn't vibe with Splatoon.
Oh, that actually hurts me.
I know.
I died a little inside hearing that. I'm sorry.
Now you know how Snowfy feels.
Yes.
Anyway, on to the next thing.
Splatoon is like the one exception. What I just because it's not really relevant to my list, but it's funny that you mentioned TF2 in the meme community. Because I think I watched a video where the actual voice actors for the characters went and redubbed a bunch of memes. Like, I think it was, like, Heavy is Dead, or whatever the video
Heavy
is.
Dead. I love that video.
Yeah, they got the original voice actors to come in and redub the whole thing, and it was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Also, every time I see TF2, I'm just like, rest in peace, Rick May.
Yes.
I love you both as the soldier and as Peppy from Star Fox. Such an amazing actor that was taken too soon.
Yep.
Okay, another thing that came out this year, as you may recall on April 1st, a piece of free media that was released by Sega, The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. This might have been, like, not to undersell the other two Sonic things, but this might have been, like, the best piece of Sonic media that came out this year. I mean, like, I struggle to say that with 100% confidence because the Frontiers DLC was amazing, but it's just so good, and it's free.
It's free.
Such amazing art and music and personality and charm for something that's free.
I will talk about it when I get to it, because I also played it this year.
Right.
There's a lot of overlap on our lists, but then there's a lot of not overlap, and so I'm like, oh,
right.
I can't.
And I'm just trying to get through the quicker stuff here. Like, for example, I remember there's a video of this up on YouTube. There's another one you can see my direct thoughts. I can't even remember what the video was called. It was on Snowflake the Pirates channel. It was like the Treasure Trove Trawl or something like that, where we picked a bunch of indie games at random and played through them for like 5 minutes each.
Oh, I watched that. That's right. That was this year?
Yeah, that was this year.
Oh my
crazy.
Gosh, what a year.
There were 2 games on that list that I personally played. The first one was called Mother Gunship. And that was, like, one of the coolest things I had the opportunity to experience this year. It was a first-person shooter, which I don't normally play those, and I don't normally like those. But this one had such a fast, frantic, silly energy to it, that I think, like, I still haven't played a lot of, like, first-person shooters in this vein, but I really had a fun time with Mother Gunship. I think it's still, like, early access.
Interesting.
Like, the full game isn't out yet. I'm not sure about that. Like, by all means, like, do your homework on this one, because if you like first-person shooter games, this one's really good. It's, like, it's very quirky, but also, like, aggressively actiony, so if that is your type of jam, this is a pretty good one. And then I played Quiet City, which I think was just like an artsy-fartsy avant-garde, like trying to have a profound message kind of game that I was like too stupid to understand the meaning of. But I didn't really vibe with that one. It's like barely a video game. But I don't know. Somebody might enjoy it.
Somebody, probably the person who made it.
Yeah.
Or they didn't.
Who knows? Like I said, I wasn't sure what the message of the game was. Anyway, I also played what Jeff Keighley is telling me is supposed to be Game of the Year, Baldur's Gate 3. I have a lot of thoughts about this one that, in the interest of time, I can't get into. But the best I can say is I don't love it. it's good, but not even just this year, like, in general, I feel like there's a lot of things that I have to play that I think are more fun than this game. Like, the multiplayer aspect, that's fine. It's a lot of fun, and, like, I've been playing through it with friends. But I don't know, everybody just seems to really love this game, whereas I'm just kind of like, oh, it's alright. And so I'm kind of in this weird position now where, like,
it's all the D&D
three
nerds.
three separate circles of friend groups are like, oh, you got to join us for a campaign. I'm like, I can't, like, that's a lot to be doing. And they're like, okay, we got to, like, choose a day of the week and dedicate, like, this many hours to, and I'm like, oh.
That's the equivalent of, once again, being in, like, 4 different D&D campaigns and trying to juggle those schedules and being like,
right,
I just want to eat lunch.
Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing too, is, like, when I play this, it makes me realize how much I'd rather just be at a table playing D&D in person, as opposed to playing the video game version of it, where like, there's still a lot of freedom and creativity and expression, but because it's a video game, you're a little less free to do whatever you want than you would be.
It's one of those from
playing at a table.
Because I haven't really been following it. Funny story, my wife got it for Christmas, and so she's like, I'm probably gonna play it soon, and I'm like, oh neat, you'll have to tell me how it is, because, like, I haven't. Again, I'm a dungeon master. I would rather just make my own world than play in somebody else's. Or, like, make a character to play in somebody else's that is, like... You've seen the kinds of characters I make in my campaigns.
Yes.
I go pretty out there.
Well, you've seen the kind of characters I've made in your campaigns.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's the other thing, too, is when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons and, like, the general fantasy setting, I'm not the biggest fan of, like, generic fantasy stuff. I really like to put a lot of quirkiness and weirdness and creativeness into what I do with D&D. And so when it's a video game that's very structured and designed a specific way, it's very serious, and, like, characters that belong to specific races are bound by the way of, like, no, this is how elves act, and this is how goblins act, and this is how owlbears act, and etc., etc. It's like, it feels just a little bit more limiting than I'd like, but it's impressively made.
Yeah, and like, I guess the point I was originally going to make is, like, compared to, like, other games, there is a lot of freedom and customization, but it is still more limited than if you actually sat at a table and were just like, you know, I want to make a robot princess or whatever to be my character. And it's like, okay, well, we can just take a Warforged, give them the noble background and, like, can they be a magical girl? Sure, I'm sure we can homebrew, like, a magic item that can do some stuff, like... there's a lot of freedom there. Whereas, like, a game, you can only work within the bounds of what is programmed into the game. So it's one of those... Yeah.
Robot princess. I think I know what I'm playing for my next
D&D. Oh my goodness, I would love it if you did that.
Anyway.
I think I said we were going to play Curse of Strahd probably next, and that would be a fun character to play in that dour campaign.
That would be. Vampire can't drink my blood if I don't have any blood for it to drink.
Oil is diet blood. Do you see where this is going? It's so ridiculous.
Even now, we've spent a lot more time on Baldur's Gate 3 than I wanted to spend on it, but, like, just voicing my feelings out there about this game. Another thing that I played this year was WarioWare Move It.
Oh! I didn't know you played that this year.
Yeah, Snowfy had it, and he invited me and other peeps over, and we all played it together.
Nice.
As a big fan of WarioWare Smooth Moves,
yes,
I really enjoyed having another game in this style, but like modernized.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Smooth Moves was still a little bit better, but I don't know. If you like the format of like traditional WarioWare, this is just another one to play, and you can do a lot of silly stuff playing this with friends.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I love they have a new batch of like mini games based on Nintendo games, but they have like more modern stuff. There's like a Metroid Dread one where you're running and you have to time your Shine Spark.
Oh, that's cool.
A lot of funny stuff that.
It's all of the 9-volt games, man. They're always they're always the highlight.
Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of like fun game modes too. There's one where it's like only one of two people on a team is actually like controlling what's happening in the game, and two other people have to guess which one is in control. So you basically have to like mirror your movements together to make it look like they can't tell like who's playing the game.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then like after you've done like a series of mini games, they have to guess like which of the two players was actually in control while you were playing the mini games.
That's fun.
It's like it's stressful, but you can also like with some big brain plays, you can kind of.
I thought you said you didn't like social deduction. That's awesome.
I don't, but I played a lot of it this year.
I was gonna say technically Danganronpa V3 falls in that category too.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, new WarioWare. It's pretty good. I feel like older ones are like maybe a bit better because this is like the first one they've made in a while. But I appreciate the effort. It's another nice addition to the series. So these ones, these next few are technically not ones that I played, but I sat down and watched a playthrough with a friend. If that counts.
one of those like, well, I count. I mean, heck, half our podcast for me is that.
Mm-hmm. When you hear which games I've listed, you'll be like, yeah, that's close enough. But so the first two, the Professor Layton, the first two installments of the Professor Layton series, Professor Layton and the Curious Village, and Professor Layton and the Diabolical Box. I sat down with our good friend who somehow her name keeps getting brought up on this darn show, Sakura Nights. And she showed me these games.
She's gunning for the mother brain position to be mentioned in every episode.
She's got a credit in the opening, so she's almost mentioned. Like, since I met her, she's been in every episode. Anyway. If you're out there, thanks for being a cool friend, Sakura. But yeah, we went through the Professor Layton games together. The first one was very simple. And as you know, I'm not much of a puzzle game guy, but since I wasn't the one playing, I was able to enjoy the story more. It was just kind of like simple and cutesy and charming, and then like the ending just gets really heavy. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a recurring pattern with this series, isn't it? And then sure enough, we got to the second one, and that one had a really good story to it, and like a really gut punch, emotional ending. And I'm told they just get crazier as the series goes on, so I'm excited to experience more of those games.
That's a franchise that genuinely I've been like, I should look into this, because this feels like it would be right up my alley.
Honestly, like, you should. I will say the first one does get kind of tedious after a while.
Mm-hmm.
where like little story progression is happening and you're just doing puzzle after puzzle. But then the moments when the story gets good makes it worth it.
Gotcha.
And the characters are just really cute and charming. Speaking of characters that are cute and charming, another one that Sakura and I went through, but we actually have a video for on my channel. We played Snufkin Melody of Moomin Valley. Specifically the demo. The full version of the game is not out yet. But just what we saw from that demo, it's so cute. Like, I want to watch Moomin Valley now, because I've never seen the show, but holy moly, these characters are so cute. Just good vibes all around. Very cozy game. And as a Kirby enjoyer, I like me some cozy games. Okay, and then the last like notable thing before we get to the top 5s that I played this year was Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley, it's a lot of fun. I don't see it like consuming my life and all my free time like it does for a lot of people. But for a $15 indie game, that's a heck of a lot of content and a heck of a lot of replay value. Plus, I can make myself a purple man with sunglasses. So this game is very progressive. It gets the thumbs up in my book.
There you go.
And then I guess the last sort of almost kind of an honorable mentions category is stuff that I bought this year, but still haven't played, even though I bought it.
Oh boy, if I listed that, we'd be here for me, and we'd be here a while.
There's actually a fair number of things on here. And also not just stuff that I bought, but stuff that I was gifted that I regrettably haven't started yet. But, let's see, the first thing I got was the Metroid Prime remaster. Which
yeah.
I've played the original, and it's a very faithful remaster. So I already know it's good. I don't even have to play it to know it's good. It's very good, and everyone should play it. A lot of this is going to be like stuff that I'm looking forward to talking about next year. But let's see. I also got Ace Combat 7, which I'm very excited to try. I've been very interested in dipping my toes in the Ace Combat series. I also got Returnal, which I am very interested in. It's like it's almost kind of Metroid vibes, but like the Sony version of Metroid. It's like creepy sci-fi stuff. You're playing as like a really badass woman with a gun. And it's third-person 3D bullet hell style gameplay.
Interesting.
Which is a very interesting format for a game, so I'm excited to see how playing that one goes. I just haven't had the time yet. But I will get to it. Another one that's technically something I've played before and would recommend, but it's a re-release, the Mega Man Battle Network Collection.
Yeah.
Mega Man Battle Network 3 is still like one of my favorite video games of all time. I adore that game to pieces, and now you have a way to play that and the rest of the games in the series. So, shoutouts to that game. Mm-hmm. I was gifted a copy of Crash Bandicoot 4.
Ooh.
Thank you very much, Guano. I promise I'll get to it. You're such a good friend, buying me games all the time. I was gifted Shadow of Mordor, which is that, Lord of the Rings type open world thing where like the randomly generated enemies like remember who you are and then come back later and they're a character or something like that.
What if this orc had a name and a family and a backstory?
Yeah, you end up getting in a skirmish with Butt Cheek Steve and his army, and then you like beat him and he's like, I'll remember this, and then he comes back and he's the final boss or whatever.
That was the wrong time to take a sip of my water.
I don't know. My friends are really eager to get me to play it. I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan personally, but like they want me to play it, so probably at some point I will. And they'll probably record it and put it on YouTube. And I got it for free because it was from like a Humble Bundle thing, so.
Hey, free game.
Like, yeah, you can't turn your nose up at a free game.
I can, but I'll get to that when I get to my list.
Okay. Speaking of free stuff, another gift that I got from Guano that I promise I will play at some point, I just haven't had the time. He generously gifted me Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
That's right.
And I'm very excited to play that one. I was so glad to hear it got a PC port, because ain't no way in heck I'm buying a PS5.
Just for that.
Yep, but I'm excited to give that a try. I should also mention, while I'm out here praising Guano, he did purchase my copy of Baldur's Gate 3 for me as well. Like, you are such a good friend.
The man out here making it rain.
I am so glad to have you in my life. Stop buying games for me, because I can't repay your kindness, and that makes me feel guilty.
Oh, man.
Anyway. But then from there, I have my top 5 games. Do you want to... Are you going to talk about your top 5 stuff, or are you going to omit them like I did?
Oh, you omitted them. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I didn't even mention my top 5 games that I played this year. I had mentioned everything else.
Let me highlight them. My list is going to be a lot shorter than if I do this. Hang on. I can do this very... We're editing it live.
You can talk about all the other stuff besides your top 5.
Oh,
that you
man.
This year.
Okay. Yeah, that's like a lot of my list. Oh my goodness, this is going to be so short now. Okay, I'll do that. Okay. But yeah, so I have now omitted my top 5, and I will talk about them when I talk about them. Okay, cool. I like this. I like this setup better. Can you tell that we didn't organize this at all? I was just like, oh hey, we should do this again.
No, we definitely did this last minute.
Okay, but coming on to my list of games that I played this year. So you'll notice a pattern, barring 2 exceptions that have recently been omitted from the list to be on the top 5. Most of what I played this year was very short. Like, it's either like small stuff that like I didn't like finish, or it was like some one-off stuff that I played with my wife. So here's the thing. I've mentioned on the podcast I'm currently building a house, combined with my full-time job, and then our podcast. And so none of these are, like, I think it goes without saying, but our podcast, you know, is its own separate little bubble. But, like, you know, the stuff that we played together this year, I'm not putting on the list. But all of that time combined...
Well, you say the stuff we played together this year,
and it was...
That's like a Kirby game, Sonic Adventure 2, and Danganronpa. Like,
yes.
That's it.
And I apologize for that in advance.
That's alright.
But, so because of that, I averaged about maybe 2 to 3 hours in a week that I could sit down and play a game. And then a bunch of that was just consumed by, man, I'm tired. I just want to just sit down and look at YouTube and not think.
Yeah.
And so, like, a lot of stuff, like, on my list is, like, very short, like, indie games or, like, stuff I didn't finish. As well as, like, my wife and I, we're still doing the thing where, like, we play games together once a week. So, like, that also, like, ate time out of anything else I could have played. But one of the things that I played with my wife this year was Sonic Mania. This was her very first Sonic game. And she wanted to, at the very least, start it with me. And then she ended up finishing it while I was at work, just on her own time.
Oh, nice.
But we started it together, and it was her very first Sonic game, which, being me, that was a lot of fun. Just being like, yeah, this is like classic Sonic, but like with a modern twist to it. You know, and she had some fun with it, and like, we had a good time.
Nice. That's funny. I also showed my friend Sonic Mania this year.
Hey, there it is. It's a good game.
Very
It was interesting because I was like, I don't know if this is like a best first Sonic game. But she seemed to think so. She's like, I want to play it, and if it's that good, I want to go backwards then and like try the other stuff. But then something else that we played together, as you mentioned, the Mario Kart 8 DLC.
Yeah,
we haven't played the most recent tracks because I was so tired when we were starting to play through like the backlog that we'd stored up. That I was just like, I'm not absorbing any of this. Can we like put it on hold? And so most likely, like, we'll probably play it, on Monday, which technically is spilling over into the new year, which is funny.
Yeah. Let's get Mario Kart 8 on like our lists 3 years in a row.
Exactly. But like, legitimately, it's been so much fun playing Mario Kart with her. Like, we have had so much fun playing it. What else came out this year? We played a lot of Switch games. For me, like, the Switch is, I have it sitting right there. I can pick it up and play it portable, or I can play it on the TV. Like, the Switch is so convenient for me. And now that, like, the Nintendo Switch Online has, like, so many more games, it's a lot more, like, there's a lot that I can just dip my toe into and be like, do I want to play this? We played Pokemon Stadium together. Which was fun, because we did blindfolded... so what we did is we battled each other, but we would wear a blindfold and pick our teams blindfolded.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun. And then, of course, just the mini games were great. We also played F-Zero 99 as well. So happy that F-Zero is alive again. I can't believe that my wife is better at F-Zero than I am, having never touched it.
Oh, sorry to interject with this randomly. Before we completely leave the topic of Pokemon Stadium.
Oh, yeah?
Can I pointlessly brag for a second? Mm-hmm. Pokemon Stadium 2, as you may or may not know from following the show, is the very first video game that I have memory of playing.
That's right.
And I beat it for the first time this year.
Hey, way to go! I've given you applause for that.
I did not beat the round 2 stuff, which is a whole new challenge to overcome, but just like the round 1 main game stuff, I got to the credits of the game. So that was like a lifelong bucket list item. And what helped was that it was on the Nintendo Switch Online and I could use save states.
Hey.
Because I could just lose and redo those battles 1,000 times. But having save states would allow me to just restart from where I was instead of, having to redo an entire Coliseum if I lost a battle.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, continue your story about F-Zero 99.
I mean that was essentially it. Just okay. Like, I played it. It's funny. I think the day that I played it, we were recording the podcast in like an hour, and so I was like, okay, I have 1 hour of free time. Let's sit down and play F-Zero 99 together. And so we did, and like, it was super fun. I realized how bad I was at the game.
Yeah.
Speaking of bad at, I mentioned this again last year, but we did play Gartic Phone again with a bigger lobby. And just, it was super fun. You can rate how much you consider that an actual game, just like you can rate how much you consider me playing Fire Emblem Heroes an actual game.
It's not that I don't consider it a game, it's that, like, you've played it before this year.
It's true. It's true.
But this is your list, so
well, and it is game. Also, I will make an argument for something that you've played before, but like, oh no, I wanna actually go back and play this again. My wife coined the term, like, your comfort game.
Sonic Adventure 2.
Exactly.
That's another one. I 100%ed Sonic Adventure 2 this year.
Yeah, that's a
which was another, like, big achievement. It was a modded version of the game, but aside from, I think, giving Shadow the bounce bracelet, it was mostly like a fair completion.
Maybe did you do anything with the Chow Garden?
Oh, that's true. I did use mods to speed up how quickly chows would level up. But
I consider that mod okay.
I just didn't have the time.
Oh yeah. Something else I played this year for like 15 minutes. This is what I meant when I said like a free game that I can turn my nose up. Which technically it wasn't free. It was bundled in with my Switch Online service. So like technically I'm paying for it, but it was like I didn't pick it. It was chosen for me. I played Echo the Dolphin.
Oh,
this is one of those games that, like, I have the, like, foggiest childhood memories of, like, this is so weirdly specific, and I don't remember what it was. Do you remember those old, like, Sonic Sprite comics? Like, from way back in the day? And there was one...
Yeah,
there was this one, and I don't even remember what it was called. I just remember that there was a joke that Sonic got killed, and so I was like, great, now Echo the Dolphin is the new mascot of Sega. And then, and then it, like, cuts to, like, Echo the Dolphin being like, finally, after years of all my crappy games, like, I get the recognition I deserve, and then somebody, like, comes in and just kills Echo. And, like...
Oh, that's so early 2000s.
Oh, that's exactly where it was from. But, like, that memory lived within me, and I was like, is this game as bad as everyone said? I'm gonna just try. Like, it's free on my Switch right now. I might as well just boot it up and try it. I played it for, like, 15 minutes before I gave up. Because I got so lost and confused, and then I kept dying, and I was like, this game sucks. And so I just turned it off. And, like, I think I moved on to something else.
Do you remember that era when reading the instruction manual was a necessary part of beating the game?
Oh, yeah. No, there was, like, no tutorial. Nothing made sense. And I was so lost. And so I'm like, Echo, I gave you a shot, and I'm sorry, but Sonic beats you by a light speed mile. Like,
you can't even stand up there with Billy and Ristar. Like, not a good Sega character.
I'd sooner play Alex Kidd than, like, Echo the Dolphin.
Well, Alex Kidd is like a platformer.
Exactly, and it's fun. Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
But anyway, getting on, like, those are, like, the little things. Like, they were, like, one day that I was like, oh yeah, I played this, like, once. Or like, Mario Kart was, like, a couple of times during the year. You know, but they were, like, one-off things. The first game, carrying over from, if you remember our last podcast, when we did this, I finally finished Pokemon Violet.
Yay!
It was good. I would say it's not my favorite entry in the franchise, but, like, it was pretty good. And like I said, I mentioned it last time that I was pretty mixed on it. That's still kind of my stance. Just kind of, you know, repeat a lot of that. Like, some things I think they got right, some things I think they didn't. I will say that ending was pretty crazy for a Pokemon game. It's one of those things, like, without spoiling anything, there is actual mention of death. And, you know, for a Pokemon game, that's kind of a pretty big deal considering the direction they've been trying to take the franchise.
That is kind of a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, there's some dark implications here. Like, and I was like, this is kind of neat that this is a kid's game. And it, like, you know, like, it still kind of sugarcoats it, but it, like, you know, it treats it with some respect, and it gives the story some weight. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'm pretty on board with this. You know, like I said, not my favorite Pokemon game, but definitely, like, it's up there. I had a lot of fun with it. Glitches aside. I don't like on the one hand, I didn't get any game crashing glitches. I just got the funny visual glitches, and I was like, dude, this game is hilarious.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, from there, let's see. That was on my list. Or that's in my top 5. That's in my top 5. That's in my top 5. That's in my top 5, but I have to mention this as a precursor to it, so you can probably guess what one of these is. So a very big Nintendo game came out this year that a lot of people were hyped about. And it's funny because everyone that I knew was like, "Oh, gotta get hyped for it by playing the first one." And I was like, well, everyone's playing this, and I don't want to get burnt out before I even get to play it, especially because my playtime is so limited. So instead, I'm going to play something else. I played Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity.
Yes.
That's a surprisingly fun game. Like, genuinely, I was like, wait, this game kind of rules? I unfortunately didn't get to finish it before said game came out that I will talk about in my top 5.
Wonder what it
could be. It's a mystery to everybody.
It's a secret to everybody.
Exactly. I'll give you 20 rupees if you don't guess.
Well, that's I think it was last year, or whenever it was that Age of Calamity came out. Maybe it was more than a year ago. But I did play the demo, so I know a little bit of what you're talking about with that one, and I agree, it was fun.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun characters. There's some surprising characters that I was like, wait, why are you playable? What? And I think that was really fun. I think the story was interesting. I was enjoying it a lot, and then I just got blindsided by the other game that came out. And so I didn't have time to finish it. So it's kind of like on my backlog of like, I should really finish this. But also after I finished, that other game, I was like, I need a break.
I'm good.
But yeah, something else that came out that surprisingly didn't make it into my top 5. As you mentioned, the Sonic Frontiers DLC came out this year.
Yes, it did.
The Final Horizon. And this is the thing too, for me, I wasn't, because I was so busy, I didn't spend a lot of time on like each DLC update. Because a lot of it was just kind of like bonus modes and content and like updates to the game that I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I think when the first one came out and it had all of like the music stuff, I was like, oh, this is fun. Like I should play this more, but also I'm kind of busy right now and I don't really have time for this. And then of course the big story DLC came out with like new playable characters and stuff. And the funny thing is, I loved it, but I'm kind of mixed on it.
Yeah, I get you.
For Frontiers being my game of the year last year, the DLC, I had some very mixed feelings, because, like, on the one hand, the execution of this DLC was a little messy. But,
a
like,
little bit, yeah.
I'm so happy that it did happen, because, like, I loved playing as the other characters. I freaking loved how hype that final battle was, and like the lore implications of what that means for Supersonic and like what's possible. Like the power scaling in the Sonic world just shot through the roof even more than it did in the base game, which is fascinating. But on the other hand, like, there was kind of some not clear, like, explanation of what you were supposed to do in that final battle.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
And like, I was getting a little frustrated with it until I figured, like, I looked up, like, what you're supposed to do, and it was...
I had to look it up, too.
It's because it's the changing your target thing, which is a mechanic that I never once used in the entire base game. Yeah. Or in any of the DLC, and then it was all of a sudden like, oh, this is what you do. And I was like, oh, and then after that, like, I got it, and I was like, oh, dude, that was so much fun.
Uh-huh.
And also just, like, I had mixed feelings on, like, the difficulty. Because, like, on the one hand, man, it was a fight to complete some of those challenges. But on the other hand, like, I kind of liked that it was challenging.
Yeah.
But, like, also, oh my gosh, the boss rush was so brutal. You know, and mind you, I'm playing the Switch version, which is, like, the lower end version.
Yeah.
So, like, it tried my patience a little bit.
Yeah, I get you.
And then the thing for me, too, I'm unsure about the ending. Like, I love the ending, don't get me wrong. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But, like, the original had this, like, bittersweet moment right at the end that I was like, dang, man, that made me feel something. Whereas this one, it kind of gives us our happy ending. And, like, both endings have a happy ending. It's just one kind of just sucker punches you out of nowhere, whereas the other one's like, oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, this is probably the canon ending.
Right.
You know, and so I'm like, okay, I don't know. And, like, it's the fact that, like, it is a split in the timeline. But, like, it made me appreciate the base ending more.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that came out. And then almost immediately, I think I actually overlapped it by, like, a few days. And so everyone had already finished with the game and decided their opinions, and I had to avoid it. Sonic Superstars came out.
Yay!
And I'm kind of there with you. For the most part, I liked it. Like, there's some weird difficulty spikes in the game. And once again, I played the Switch version. Which, you know,
glitchy.
It's pretty. The funniest thing is that I did play it with 4 players. I had my wife sat down and played with me for a bit, and also my 2 sister-in-laws who had never touched a Sonic game before.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually crashed the game. Essentially, because the way that the game chooses who the camera follows is pretty weird. Like, I think it works really well if there's, like, 2 or maybe 3 people. But if you have 4 people and you're all going at max speed, especially 2 people who have never played a Sonic game before and are just going, and all of a sudden I know what I'm doing, but then control gets ripped from me and it starts following one of them, it gets pretty hectic. And, like, what we ended up doing is, like, I think some of us went into a special stage while some of us kept going. And the camera didn't know who to follow, and so the game just crashed. Which, like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, bad game. But on the other hand, like, dude, we were laughing at that. Like, we had such a fun time doing it. But it became apparent that I was like, I can't enjoy this game with 4 people, 2 of which have no idea what they're doing. And so I'm just gonna go on my own and play it. And so I went off on my own, and then I just, like, I had a good time. And then, like, 2 of the bosses near the very end absolutely beat the tar out of me. And I didn't do any of the post-game stuff.
Yeah, that's the post game is where most of, like, my big complaints about the game are.
Yeah, because I know the final boss of the post game is very let's just say unforgiving with its instant kill moves.
Well, there's like the second playthrough thing that you do in the post game.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
That one's got an insane final boss, but then there's also a true final boss beyond that one.
Yeah, because I also didn't get all the chaos emeralds.
Even worse.
Okay, noted. But, and honestly, because I didn't do any of that, I was like, yeah, it's just a good game. Like,
right.
I'm content to just leave it there. I will say, I love Trip. Trip is a welcome addition to the cast. I freaking love this new character. And they brought Fang back! Which, dude, Sonic Triple Trouble is like one of my favorite like Game Gear Sonic games. And so like I'm so happy that he is now back and we have another like old school antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. I freaking love him.
For both Fang and Trip, I say bring him into the modern continuity. Give us new designs of them.
Yeah, and then yep, those are also on my top 5. So the last thing snuck its way into my list this year. Basically, I just finished a very big game, and I was like, oh, I need a palate cleanse after that. I need something short and simple that I can just pick up and put down super easily. And I don't have to like learn a whole bunch of new mechanics to play it. That it's something that I could just turn my brain off and play. And so what I ended up deciding was actually a lot of Switch Online games I played this year. The Pokemon trading card game for the Game Boy, the Game Boy.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one.
I picked that up and I actually beat it last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. It's funny. I started out with the Charizard deck, but then I got a Venusaur like super early on, and I made the switch to that because I liked its playstyle a little better.
Oh,
and so
nice.
I ended up running I ended up abandoning the fire deck and ended up going with a grass deck. I will also say that final gauntlet of the game is brutal. Like, I'm so glad they let you save in between each thing, because 4 different card games and then a surprise 5th one without any stops, that was rough. And I loved it because my final challenge, I ended up actually stalling him down to where he had no cards left in his deck, and before the game decided a victory for me, I knocked out his last Pokemon and got my last prize card.
Nice.
It was a hype final battle that thankfully my Wigglytuff managed to stall him, which was a lot of fun. That was a crazy final battle, especially because he cheats. He gets the legendary cards and gets to like use them in his deck. But yeah, it was a short, fun little game that I was just like, I needed this after a big long game. And so
did you get to meet my favorite character, Jennifer, and her cheap team of all Pikachus and Raichus?
I did get to meet her. What was funny though is that I found a David and a Joseph and like several other people in my family that I'm just like, ha. And of course, David absolutely beat the stuffing out of me. And I was like, how dare you? But yeah, it was good. But yeah, other than that, everything else is relegated to my top 5.
Sweet. Now there's the question of how we want to do this. Because I know we've got at least one game that we share on our top 5 list.
What could it be?
This mystery. Would you prefer to go like I do 5, you do 5?
Yeah, I say we do
4,
that.
you do 4, or do you want to go through all of my top 5 and then all of your top 5?
Let's go 5 and 5. I think that'll be more fun.
I think there is a possibility that we end up maybe like for something that's on our list, one of us gets to it sooner than the other.
That is a good possibility. I'll let you decide then what you think would be more fun to do.
If we get to something earlier, actually maybe not. I don't know. If one of us gets to a game that the other has like sooner, then we'll just wait till that person gets to there, and then we'll both talk about it.
Okay, if you have something later.
If that's the case.
All right. Well, I'll let you give me your number 5 first.
So my number 5 for this year is Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade.
Ah!
I have not played much of it, which is the only reason that it's so low on the list. And also, if I had played Metroid Prime Remastered, then that might have bumped this off the list. But that notwithstanding, I played like the first 2 chapters of it pretty recently. It's really good. As somebody who has finally gotten through the original Final Fantasy VII, I let this be a little treat to myself for my hard work in getting through that very long game.
You started another really long game.
Yeah, I mean, I hardly ever get the time to play it anyway, so it's cool. This one will last me a while. But, like, right off the bat, I love this one. Everything about it just captures the charm of the original, but makes it look so much prettier and flashier than what the PS1 was even capable of. I love Barrett. I love Barrett so much. They made him amazing in this game. And even more so than Barrett, my favorite character from all of Final Fantasy VII, Sweet Aerith. I love her so much. She is so pretty and wonderful and amazing. And seeing her all remastered and full of life now, I'm just like, yes! My queen! And just in general, like, Cloud's super cool, but also, like, they still capture a bit of his, like, dorkiness and immaturity. And Tifa's really cool. Oh, it's good. It's just really fun reimagining of Final Fantasy VII.
Neat.
Makes me happy to be playing it. What is your number 5?
So this might be controversial, but it's the mystery game, Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, mine happens a little bit later in my list.
I kind of figured, and this is why I was like, I might just say what I'm going to say about it, just because.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Because it is lower on my list. I had a hard time placing it because I knew it was going to be in my top 5.
Right.
But like, and part of it isn't even with the game itself. It might just be the fact that like I only had like 2 hours a week to play a video game.
It's a massive open world game, and you were strapped for time.
So much of my year was spent playing this game, and like it got to the point that like right at the ending, I stopped doing side quests. I was like, I'm just gonna rush to the end so that I can finally finish this. Because it's like October, and I'm still playing this game that everyone finished back in May. And so I had to dash but like, it was fun. Like, I love everything that it built on the original. But the thing for me, so like, I want to say that like the lows for me were really low, but the highs were so incredibly high.
Oh, okay.
And so I think that's why this ended up being at number 5 on my list.
Only number 5.
Yeah, because, like, you know, I spent so much time on it that, like, I started to get a little burnt out at the end. And mind you, again, that I'd played Hyrule Warriors as, like, a warm-up to it. As, like, a refresher. And so it was
so you spent a lot of time in this version.
A lot of time in Hyrule that I was like, okay, I need a break. Like, because like on the one hand, for me, the building mechanic, I liked it, but like my brain and the way it works wasn't very suited to that kind of game.
Yeah,
like I'd make the argument that like. There were times where, like, I felt like I cheesed a puzzle, and it wasn't satisfying, like, this puzzle has one solution, can you figure it out? Like, whereas, like, with the building mechanic kind of felt like anything goes. And then, like, as fun as the depths were the first time that I went there, like the Sky Islands, they kind of lost some of the magic as it wore on. And I kind of found, like, and again, with me rushing to finish it, I was like, okay, I don't even want to explore this anymore. I just want to get to the next big story bit. But that's where, like, it swings back, and the thing that, like, rockets it into the top 5 is the story was so dang good. I also got a little salty because they stole one of my ideas for that Zelda campaign I wanted to run.
Oh yeah, the Zelda D&D thing.
I told you about it when it happened. I was like, they freaking took my idea and they did it better than I was gonna do it, and I'm so mad. And if they take this other idea, I'm gonna be pissed. And they didn't take my other idea, and so I'm like, okay, I need to run this Zelda campaign before Nintendo starts stealing all my stuff.
Before the next Zelda comes out.
But like genuinely, I had a great time with this game. And not only that, but like, whereas like the first one, I was like, I like this Zelda. I don't know if she's my favorite Zelda, but like, I like her. This game won me over on Zelda. Like, yes. Oh my goodness, this is now my favorite Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and it's, I also feel like it's because she was such a brat in Breath of the Wild that like makes her even better, because you can see how much she's grown,
how much she's like the events changed her, and like she's so likable in this. I fell in love with it. I also want to just acknowledge Tulin just in his entirety. I freaking love Tulin. Oh my gosh, he was my favorite. And also Riju, like, I liked her a lot. Like, I loved all the champions. I did have a running joke about how Sidon didn't like me. Without spoiling anything in the game. Just, like, a lot of events that happened, and just Sidon being away from me. And I'm like, Sidon, just say that you don't want me around. Like, but it was, like, funny because then the joke kind of fed back into itself, and it was like, nah, I like Sidon, he's a busy man. I know that I'm joking, but, like, it's funny.
You're with Yona now.
Okay, I actually
Am I not good enough for you?
I really like Yona a lot, actually.
I do too. Yona's great.
I know the internet hates her, but, like, I genuinely like her.
The internet hates her because, much like Yona, they love Sidon.
I think they have more in common with Yona than they think.
Yona is the audience surrogate.
But yeah, that was my number 5.
Okay. And you went ahead and talked about it anyway, even though we established that.
Well, okay. Here's the thing. I knew mine was going to be at the bottom, and I was like, I have less positive things to say about it than probably you do, because it's higher, but...
Right. Oh, well. On to number 4.
Number 4. What have you got?
So for my number 4, I put Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe.
Hey! That's right, that came out this year.
That did come out this year. So this is a very solid remake of arguably one of, like, the top, like, contenders for best Kirby game of all time. Mm-hmm. And when they announced they were doing this, I was like, oh, it's just going to be a port. And then I noticed that D had his funny Club Penguin look that he had from Return to Dreamland. And I'm like, okay, so maybe it's going to be like a port with like a slight visual upgrade. No, this one was like redone and just like really polished and shined. Like the graphics are so beautiful for a Kirby game. Everything looks really nice, and especially I like the sort of like cell shaded art style that all the characters have, how they have like the outlines around them. Just does a good job of like making it clear like where you are while you're playing, so you don't get lost against the very beautiful backgrounds. But yeah, Return to Dreamland was already a fantastic game that I liked very much. But all of the new stuff that they added to this one is just incredible. The Kirby games are always famous for like having their, you know, the bonus minigame stuff in addition to the main campaign. They transformed that into the Merry Magoland theme park, where they brought back so many like old school minigames from other like Kirby games that are like really famous ones. They brought back Checkerboard Chase from Kirby 64.
Yo, wait, hold on. We gotta get together and play that now.
We do. It's so good.
Oh my goodness.
all of the minigame stuff, they picked a lot of old school minigames that I was a big fan of. Things like the bomb rally from Nightmare in Dreamland. That one's back. They have this funny little feature how you can unlock these like masks that your character can wear, not just during the minigames, but during the main like story campaign. You can wear a mask of Kind the Fish. And you can just have a dopey look on your face. And some of the masks also change like the voice clips of the character you're playing as to a different one. So you can get stuff like, what's an example? You can get like a Susie mask, and then instead of like your Kirby grunts, you make Susie noises while you're playing.
That's so cute, wait.
And they have those for like a ton of the characters, and it adds like a ton of fun to the whole thing. Like, so all that extra stuff. And then on top of that, there's like the bonus after you beat the main campaign, you get the Magalore epilogue.
Oh, that's right.
And that is peak Kirby. Like, it is so cool. I don't know what it is, but like having a Kirby game where you start off, like, Kirby is always, like, easy and you're, like, overpowered so you can just get through the game and have fun. Starting weak and then leveling up your abilities as you progress through a Kirby game is so cool. And, true to form with all, like, modern Kirby stuff, the post-game content goes hard. Some of the most insane boss fights we've had in the entire series, like in all of like 2D Kirby, and you couple that with like all these really crazy boss fights you get in the Magalore epilogue campaign. You get a new true arena that has all of those boss fights back to back with the other boss fights. And so it just makes for a wild ride. And then, like, at the end of that true arena, you get a unique new final boss that goes positively off the walls insane. And it's just a good time. It is like the old, like, really good Kirby game blended with a lot of new that fits right in.
Neat.
So that's number 4 for me.
Awesome. Okay, well, number 4 for me was a fun little indie game that I happened upon. So I don't know if you've heard of a popular fighting game called Rivals of Aether.
I have heard of said popular fighting game.
Well, maybe if you've heard of it, you've also heard of this fun little strategy game called Dungeons of Aether, taking place in the same world. Oh my gosh, this game was such a fun little delight.
Can you wave dash in that game?
I mean, your movement on the map, you kind of just pop to an area, so it's kind of like wave dashing.
It looks like wave dashing.
Alright. No, so this was funny, because I first discovered this, because Ian Flynn, I think on one of his social medias, had promoted that he was actually going to be writing the story for this little indie game. And I was like, yo, wait, what? And I started, like, looking into, like, I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, this is Rivals of Aether, but, like, they're making their own little spin-off game. Like, this, like, side little tactics game. It's not, like, it's weird, it's not a tactic, it's like a strategy RPG. That's what it is.
Okay.
But it has such a fun, like, weird combat system of, like, essentially, like, there's a bunch of, like, random dice rolls that then you pick numbers from. Like, you take turns picking numbers, but then there are abilities that let you, like, pick other stuff, and, like, your gear and equipment and your special abilities get, like, factored in. Like, it's very simple and easy to learn, but then, like, as you play more of it, it gets more, like, nuanced and complex.
And you get to make some, like, crazy character builds that are just super fun. The story is, like, it's very simple, but it's charming. And, like, the soundtrack absolutely slaps. Like, obviously, if you've listened to any of the soundtrack and, like, Rivals of Aether, Dungeons of Aether is right up there with it. Like, it's got such beautiful music.
Oh, okay.
Just, like, good chiptune music. And the thing was, like, the demo was free on Steam, but this was, like, my internet kind of sucked, and, like, I hadn't turned on my laptop in a bit, and it kind of would chug whenever I try and open Steam, so I was like, I'll get to it eventually. And then suddenly, like, a rumor came around, like, hey, this might be getting a Switch port. And I was like, well, if it gets a Switch port, that'll just be easier for me to play. And sure enough, it got ported to Switch, and it was like, I think it was like $10. Like, it was dirt flippin' cheap. And so I was like, well, dang, I'm gonna snatch that up and play it, because I only get so many hours to play something. And I freaking loved it. It's most likely going to be a podcast episode.
Excellent.
I absolutely loved it. Fleet is so freaking adorable. And here's the funny thing too. It's Ian Flynn. And so, like, I was like, Fleet is just Tangle. like there's enough there to keep them separate that I'm like, oh, I can tell the difference. But, like, that same starry-eyed, I want to be a hero, like, rambunctious ball of energy. Like, and I was like, I'm sold. I freaking love this character. And, like, all of the characters are so freaking good in this game. Like, I love them. But yeah, that was my number 4.
I did just get through saying earlier that I like my RPGs to be very quirky, so
oh yeah,
this appeals to me.
And especially, like, the way you power up and, like, the implications of it is it's so neat. And then just, oh my gosh, the final boss is good. That's all I gotta say, is the final boss was, like, some of the most fun I had with that game.
Excellent. A good finisher.
Yep. It finished pretty dang strong. But that was my number 4. Should we move on to our number 3?
Yeah, number 3. Alright, so I found this very interesting niche title for my number 3. You'll have to tell me if you've heard of this one. I don't think you have, but there is a chance. It's called Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony.
Wait! It made your top...
I didn't talk about it.
No, yeah. It's funny, too, because I kind of, like, ruled when I wrote my list. I'm like, well, stuff we did on the podcast, I'm not going to put on the list. And also, I did already play it. But, like, I do want to throw an honorable mention with you in there. That I was like, yeah, no, this is... We played this a lot. But, that makes me so happy.
It was not only among the games that I played this year, it was absolutely one of the best. I don't know how much we can talk about it here, because I don't know if this is coming out before or after the other episode.
That's right.
Kind of same funny scenario as Sonic Frontiers last year.
I know.
But just know there will be minimum 7 hours worth of us talking about this game for you guys to listen. It's very good.
That's another reason why I wanted this episode to be shorter, because I was like, oh man, I talk so much about that game. What else can I say?
Yeah. So just suffice to say, I really liked it. I recommend it. I recommend even going through the entire series and then ending on V3, because it's a very satisfying conclusion to the whole franchise. But yeah, that's all I will say. So, your number 3, sir.
Oh, my number 3. Okay. So once again, fitting kind of the theme, short little indie game. That is also going to be probably an episode on the podcast.
Yes.
Is this fun little indie game that came out of nowhere called Pseudo Regalia.
Yes, I've heard of this.
Oh my goodness, I loved this game. It's it's funny too, because this is not my usual vibe with a game. Like, I like very, like, story-heavy, character-driven games. This game is defined by its gameplay, and oh my goodness, does the gameplay feel good. Like, the word that I know there's two types of people that play Pseudo Regalia. I am in the camp of the schmovement. Oh my goodness, the schmovement feels so good. Like you start out with a pretty basic kit, and then as you power up more, just like, it's the best feeling controls I think any video game has ever had. And specifically for me, so for her birthday, my wife got a Steam Deck. So I got to play this on the Steam Deck, and it felt amazing. Like, I genuinely hope this gets a Switch port, because it would thrive on the Switch. And like, this was just such a delightful game. It was short. I think I played it over just the Thanksgiving break, and then I got slapped by COVID.
You're right.
And so I was like, well, I've got time. Like, let me just sit down and, like, play this game that's like, it's like $10 on Steam, or not. No. It was like $6. And I was just like, $6? Yeah, I'll get this game. And it was a good time. And so, like, it is now definitely going to be a podcast episode, because I need you to play this game. But like, huge recommendation. This is a good game.
Sweet. I do like schmovement.
Yeah, it's what's the term for it? Because I know people have been using the phrase Metroidvania, and I
yes,
we hate that term because we're like,
right, search action. Yeah, because it is like a big map, and then you go and you get new powers, and they allow you to explore other places. Okay,
and it's like, new ways to move and interact with your environment is so great, and just, it feels good, and it's very visually, it's done in that style of like the old like N64 PS1 like style graphics. I believe it was a Game Jam game.
Okay.
And so it's really good. But that was my number 3.
Excellent. Before we continue, I would just like to say that it is not even New Year's Eve yet, and people are outside my apartment doing fireworks. So, apologies if any of that makes it through into the video.
Explosions
in the background. We're just celebrating games we really like over here.
Exactly.
And also, I'm pretty sure it's illegal to do fireworks in my city, so that's interesting.
Ha!
But anyway. So the next thing that I have on my list, and when I say what it is, it will implicate what the number 1 thing is on my list. But, so the next thing that I have is this little indie game with some good schmovement that will probably be a thing I recommend on the podcast. My number 2 for the top 5 games I played this year is Pizza Tower.
Hey!
Pizza Tower is a very, very fun game. I love just the crude art style that it has. Almost kind of gives it like more personality. Like, it's very rough and pixely. And the characters have very like exaggerated Looney Tunes-esque proportions. And it's just really silly and chaotic, and it, unlike most video games anymore, which are trying to have this degree of like, oh, we got to make everything look fun and marketable and like have all this, world building and whatever. Like, this game just gets real weird with it, and it is happy to get real weird with it. I absolutely love our protagonist, Peppino, because usually everybody wants these protagonists that are like these everyman type characters who are like buff and cool and strong and capable and confident and whatever. This is just like a paranoid old man that runs a pizza shop. It's got such a silly vibe to it that, like, I feel like even today's cartoons don't get right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to knock on today's cartoons, because, let's be real, I don't watch them, so I can't really critique them. But there's a degree of, like, cartoons kind of being more like, oh, let's try, like, serious storytelling and whatever. And I'm like, I miss some good slapstick, man. Like... like, very funny visual gags and comedy is sort of a dying art. And so the fact that there's a video game that just gets it so right makes me so happy. But yeah, this one will definitely be the subject of discussion on our podcast. So stay tuned for that.
Mm-hmm.
Your number 2.
My number 2... was this, I wouldn't call it an indie game, but it was a fun little interesting game that kind of came out of nowhere on April 1st. The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog.
The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh my god. Look, this has been a great year for Sonic. Like, so much good stuff came out this year. Like, not even just, like, video games, but, like, just promotional stuff and collabs that, like, Sonic and Sonic Team did.
And media.
It was just a great year to be a Sonic fan.
Mm-hmm.
But of everything that came out this year, this one I think had me just grinning the biggest.
Yeah.
This is, some of the best writing that these characters have ever had. Like, the characterization for them is so perfect. I want to specifically highlight, and let me be clear, I freaking adore Silver the Hedgehog. I'm so glad he's not in this game, but Blaze the Cat is. She is, like, my favorite character, tied in first place with Sonic. And the fact that, like, she, like, whenever she's with Silver, she kind of just gets, like, just compressed into just, oh, she's just Silver's girlfriend. And, like, that's all anyone thinks, and as a fan of Sonic Rush, I despise that. Because she is such a character in and of herself with all these fascinating nuances. And so, like, having her just get to be there made me so happy. Especially her segment of the game was, like, probably my favorite. I don't know, maybe the ending. The ending was so good. Like, this could have easily just been a throwaway gag of a game. Just like, oh yeah, we killed Sonic. Anyway, moving on. But, like, there was so much thought and love and consideration put into this game.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, even though, like, it's kind of silly that, like, oh, hey, yeah, we killed Sonic. Like, the mystery is charming. All of the character writing is amazing. The freaking trash can gag, if you know, you know. It was, like, my favorite thing. And, like, this game was so good that, again, I played Sonic Mania with my wife, and that was her first Sonic game. But then she sat down and played this and had a good time. Which I think is a testament to how good this game is. And then just the cherry on top, this game is completely free.
Yes.
You have no reason to not play it.
Well, if you don't like Sonic.
I mean, maybe, but even then...
Even then, this might help you like Sonic if you like visual novels.
It was so just fun. And, like, the jokes genuinely hit. Like, this was one of my favorite games I played this year, and it's now a contender as one of my favorite Sonic games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I freaking loved it.
a free-to-play April Fool's joke ends up being this good.
It had no right to be as good as it was, and yet it was. And I was just like, I'm so glad I played this. I'm so happy I'm a Sonic fan right now. Like, this feels amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was... There was one game that, like, this and this other game were battling it out for the number one spot. And my number one beat it out just barely for a few specific reasons. But this was a close contender.
Nice. That is, I didn't mention this when I was talking about the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, but, like, this is another one that, like, easily could have made it to my top 5, but just barely didn't. But, I remember when this first came out, all of my good friends, the X-Whips, we got together. Sakura was the one that was playing through the game and streaming it, and we all, like, voice acted the characters and dubbed it together. We probably should have recorded it, but everyone had kind of inconsistent schedules, and so we were just, like, coming and going and trading who was voicing characters. But, man, what a delightful game.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
I wonder what this mysterious game of the year that I have could be. Such a mystery. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. For quite a while now. This is so funny because when people watch the my top 5 ranked games on Snowflake the Pirates channel, I'm just going to be saying all the same stuff. But when for quite some time, I think, like, ever since Skyward Sword came out, whatever the currently released Zelda game has been, like, my favorite Zelda game. Like, Skyward Sword came out, and I'm like, this is my favorite Zelda. And then A Link Between Worlds came out, I'm like, this is my favorite Zelda. And then Breath of the Wild came out, I'm like, no, this is my favorite Zelda. I didn't get a chance to play the Link's Awakening remake, but that probably would have been my favorite when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so here we are with my new favorite Zelda game. It's so funny. Like, okay, flashback. Cut to 2017. Due to unfortunate circumstances, I am unemployed, have a tremendous amount of free time, and a new open world Zelda comes out. And I spent hours upon hours playing it and loving it and adoring it, and it was one of my favorite games ever. Now we're here in 2023, where, at the time of release, unemployed, new open world Zelda comes out. I spend hours upon hours playing it and loving it. But yeah, it's for most of the pros of what you had to say about the game, I didn't have the same time constraints as you.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, around the time that this came out, I was house sitting for our mom, and so I had just some real, like, quiet space where I could just play the game undistracted from anything. And just, like, the story and the world and all the characters won me over. I am that one guy out there who loves the Gorons most of all as their favorite race. And so having Yunobo as a traveling companion and going through the fire temple with him, oh, that made my world.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, I understand where you're coming from on stuff like the building mechanics and the way that puzzles are designed. I've heard a lot of people have this sort of take. And for me, I kind of do prefer that the puzzles are open-ended and can be solved more than one way. And, like, I admit it does feel more satisfying to, like, solve a puzzle than to cheese a puzzle. But sometimes I would just do some really stupid things, and the game would let me do them and count that as solving the puzzle. And that feels so good.
Uh-huh.
There's, like, a little, like, crevice that I could crawl into, but it was, like, too high up off the ground, so I made a stack of, like, pots, and made a staircase out of pots, and then climbed up that and crawled through the hole. And, like, little stuff like attaching rockets to anything is just, like, the most fun.
Oh, the rockets were the best thing in that game.
The thing, just, like, the fuse mechanic, I feel, and, like, using Ultra Hand to stick stuff together was, like, my favorite thing about the game, because it just allowed me to do some of the stupidest, most fun things that I couldn't believe I was doing in a Zelda game. But then at the same time, I was able to take it more seriously because of stuff like the really good story. And I think especially one of the biggest highlights is the way they did the dungeons in this one compared to how they did them in Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild still had some fun dungeons, but they all looked the same and all the bosses looked the same. And there was just kind of a lack of, like, enemy variety too. Whereas in this game, each area you go to has stuff that makes it unique.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels a lot more satisfying and exciting to explore this world because you're finding different things in each corner of the world. And especially the bosses. They feel way more exciting. The boss in the Rito dungeon,
I was just about to say, yes, that was probably my favorite one.
That, like, the music during that fight is so amazing. And, like, above all else, the main thing I want to give this game is just that, I loved Breath of the Wild so much. I loved its tone, I loved its story, I loved exploring the world and doing all this useless stuff for hours on end. I felt a little bit dissatisfied with the final boss fight and, like, how it ended. They more than made up for that in spades with this game's, like, not just final boss, but, like, the final set of, like, battles that you do leading up to the final boss, and then the actual final boss itself. It is so exciting, it is so involved with, like, the really rich and engaging combat mechanics, and it'll really, like, push you to your limits, because for me, like, I kind of was just, like, wanting to experience the story more than, like, meander and do a bunch of side quests, so I didn't actually spend a lot of time doing side quests until after I'd beaten the game. And so with that, I didn't have any upgraded armor. Stuff was killing me very quickly. And all of that. And so this final boss fight gave me a real exciting challenge. And in general, it was just a very, like, hype experience. And then to cap it all off, like, the actual ending, it's kind of hard to say. Like, sometimes I get, like, emotionally invested in some pieces of media, and then other times I don't, even though I really like that media. It's hard to say, like, when it is that media will get me emotional, especially video games. I cried during the ending of Tears of the Kingdom. It was just, it hit all the right sweet spots for me. It was so exciting and satisfying, both from a game standpoint and also from, like, a narrative standpoint. And so just seeing, like, this resolution to this world that I had already spent so much time in and come to love, I got to spend even more time in it and come to appreciate even more about it now that it's, like, in a time skip. And then it just has, like, this perfect bow that it wraps the ending with. Like, I get that some people have their, like, linear Zeldas that they prefer, and, you know, like, there still are some foibles with the design of open world Zelda that we're hoping will get fixed in the future should they do another open world Zelda, which it sounds like they probably will. But, like, not speaking for the masses, this was a game for me. This was what I needed in the moment when it came out, and just a game that made me very happy to be playing.
Neat.
And you put it at number 5, you piece of crap. No, it's fine. I kid.
It's kind of funny.
I did say it was number 1 for me for that reason, but yeah.
Yes. It's very interesting that my number 5 is your number 1, and your number 5 in relation to my number 1 is just really funny to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because the number 1 game I played this year was Echo the Dolphin! No, I'm just kidding.
Woo!
It's absolutely not Echo the Dolphin. No. So, something else that I played this year was actually a Final Fantasy game. Most notably,
yes.
It is the game that finally broke my Final Fantasy curse. So, for those who don't know, for most of my life, I have been cursed to never finish a Final Fantasy game. For various reasons outside of my control. I played Final Fantasy 3, and the thing is, the curse, the way it works, I get to about the midpoint of the game, and then something prevents me from ever playing it again. Like with Final Fantasy 3, we lost the cartridge. Final Fantasy 5, I lost the hardware I was playing it on. What was it? Final Fantasy 10, I tried, and I was playing that with a friend in college that then I stopped going, and then I'm no longer associated with that person, so I'm never gonna play that game again after the midpoint. Like it's so funny how consistent it's been. And so, as I mentioned before, my wife and I, we play games together. Like, we have recommendations for each other that, like, oh, you should play this. And the thing is, this game, she cites as, like, the game that got her into gaming. Like, it is one of her absolute childhood favorites. And that is Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah!
And so, as part of this thing of, like, hey, you should play this, you should play that, and, like, we'd been going back and forth, I had her play The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, and then she's like, cool, here's a whole, like, several hour JRPG.
Man, that's so interesting when you're sharing games you like with somebody.
I know, it's so
and you
funny.
show them a small, charming, independently developed game, and then they show you a long RPG.
It's so funny, especially because we were going through Danganronpa and Final Fantasy IX at the same time. Which is, like, the biggest reason I only had, like, 2 hours a week to play. It was basically my Monday nights after I got home from work. And again, it was only for, like, a few hours. We would play Final Fantasy IX. But, like, holy crap, dude. I freaking loved this game. And it's funny, too, because, like, this was one of those games that, like, as soon as I finished it, I was like, yeah, that was a good time. And then suddenly, just, like, I felt like my brain just thinking about it. Like, just, if I ever had a moment where I wasn't, like, actively focused on something else, I was thinking about this game. And, it is the meme of, like, the man just looking out and just thinking about it, because this game was so much fun. I'm trying not to talk too much specifics about it, because, like, I do think that eventually this will be a podcast episode. We're gonna play some shorter stuff first, because we just got done with Danganronpa, and I'm like, hey, we need some smaller stuff to kind of break this up, because that was a commitment, and I don't want to do that again. But, like, my wife has said that she's like, dude, I want to come onto your podcast and talk about that game because I freaking love it. And I was like, yes! Bring her back! Let's play Final Fantasy IX! Like, I don't know how to say it. This game was just good. And it's so funny because looking into the history of the game, and apparently it's like one of the black sheep when it released, it just had everything going against it with, like, it released on a dying console. The PS2 was already on shelves. People already knew that Final Fantasy X was coming out before the game even released. And just, like, all this stuff about it, like, was conspiring against it, but, like, it still stands as such a good game. You know, and, like, I fell in love with the characters. It was so exciting, just, like, the short little bursts I got to play it in. And, you know, most of all, I think just playing it with my wife was so much fun. To, like, look at this game and be like, this is the game that got her into gaming. And just seeing how just charming it was, how well written the characters were, and just, like, that feeling of adventure. And, like, it's funny, because I know you mentioned you don't like the classic fantasy, the Tolkien-esque vibes.
Yeah.
The swords and sorcery.
Well, it's not swords and sorcery, because I just said I like Tears of the Kingdom.
It's true.
It's not like that. It's more so just like the very, like, by the numbers fantasy, like elves and dwarves.
Yeah, it's true. And this actually doesn't go by the books, unlike a lot of things. It's very much its own world, but it is interesting because apparently, you know, with like 7 and 8. Final Fantasy had started to stray into more of, like, the steampunk kind of, like, vibe. Not like steampunk, but, like, you know, the more futuristic fantasy.
Yeah, kind of like newer technology being integrated into it.
And so, like, when they made this game, they wanted to harken back to a lot of their roots. And so, there's so many, like, references. I'm so glad my wife could point them out to me. That she's like, oh yeah, no, this is, like, a staple Final Fantasy trope. And, like, it does have that more, like, swords and sorcery magic and stuff, like, you know, like the airships that are shaped like boats. And just, like, I don't know, everything about it was just so charming and fun. I loved all of the characters. Freaking Eiko, Dagger, Zidane. Oh my gosh, freaking Steiner was wonderful. Vivi, Freya. Like, I loved this cast of characters. And I got so invested in them. And not to mention just the themes of this game were so... Like there are a lot of different themes in this game. But one of the biggest ones is, like, coming to terms with your own mortality.
Ooh.
Which is such, like, a heavy theme. And, like, I can't say anything without spoiling anything, but there are, like, 2 characters in particular that embody this concept so well. And they're, like, polar opposites. And it's so just beautiful. And it's such a just... This game was amazing. And like I said, I finished it, and I was just like, oh, that was a neat game. I'm glad you showed this to me. And then just, like, all of a sudden afterwards, like, the very next day, I was at work, and I was just thinking about it. Where I was just like, holy cow, this game was good. And so, like, I had to put it at the number 1 spot because of just, like, the effect that it had on me, as well as just getting to just spend that time with my wife playing this game that meant so much to her, and I can see why it did. And so, yeah, like, this is definitely going to be a podcast episode in the distant future.
Sweet.
And I'm so excited to just share it with you. Eventually. But for now, it will just sit here as my number 1 game of the year.
Hooray!
Yeah. But I just thought it was kind of funny that, like, with Tears of the Kingdom as my number 5, and your number 1, and then you have a Final Fantasy game as your number 5, and I have one as my number 1.
We almost got the memo.
I just thought that was really funny.
Realistically, though, the big game that we played this year was Danganronpa V3.
Yes.
And that made my list, so might not be too surprising if next year we play Final Fantasy IX and that makes my list.
It might not be next year, but
no promises,
it's gonna be in our future.
In our future, definitely. All right, well, thanks for listening, everybody. We went into a little more depth here, but I do still want to plug my good friend Snowflake the Pirate. If it's not already up, then soon it will be, but more likely than not, he'll have his video ready before this one. You can also hear my thoughts. Most of the same, maybe a few extra comments here and there about different stuff, but in addition to my top 5 favorite games, you can also hear their favorites, as well as we cover a lot of honorable mentions and just discuss how much fun it's been to play various games throughout the year. So I really hope you'll go check out that video, and also thank you for tuning into this one.
Yep. There's no joke.
2023 was no joke.
Yeah.
I like how you're worried about background sound. I have like a whole section of the podcast that I didn't cut out where you've got like I think it was Haru just screaming in the background. And then I did manage to cut out most of it and move it to bloopers, but there's a section where like walks in, you're like, "Oh, hi." Anyway, start recording. Okay, I managed to be as comprehensive as I could about finding everything that I played this year.
I kept a list.
I hate you.
Hopefully next year I'll actually have time to play more than just a few short indie games.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, I think that's a fair spot to call it.
I think you're right. Ended up being a little longer than I thought it would be, but like
it's 2 hours. We literally can't do anything that is like below an hour and 50 minutes.
The thing too is you started talking and I started talking too.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's what we do. Every time we'd bring something up, like one of us would bring it up and the other would have something to say. So 2-hour video.
that's the foundation of our podcast.
More specifically, an hour and 50-something minute video.
No,
because we always get it like just under 2 hours.